Greetings, everybody. We are live for another amazing, excellent, fantastic episode of the show on here with Pavan tonight. I'll formally introduce him here momentarily. We'll give everybody just a moment to come online. We were chit-chatting, catching up on old times here, so we got a couple minutes late. Pavan, you were walking the dog, man. Is everything cool in the neighborhood there in Columbia, Tusculum? What's going on there on the streets tonight?
I mean, listen, everything was actually cool for once. I mean, the weather these last couple of days has finally turned into something that I can deal with. and my dog can go on more than like a 2-block walk before absolutely losing. So, dog's doing well. But it's beautiful out. So for anybody that doesn't have their windows open right now, please open them because it is absolutely gorgeous out. And it's been a while since we felt weather this brisk and cool and just nice.
Indeed, it's a beautiful day in Cincinnati. We got some folks popping on here joining us, so we can go ahead and kick it off. So for those of you joining us, thank you. We appreciate it. We've got some more great guests coming up this week and next week. But as always, we want to talk to Pavan and get his story, hear more about him and his unique and interesting background. I laid out a little bit in the comments. Man, you've got one of the most breadth of experience in the legal field. That's super cool. So we'll talk about that. But if anybody has a comment, question, please drop those in the comments. Please share this post. You know, one of the challenges that we have right now for the candidates in this 2020 election cycle, and here we are, 90 days out. It's a little more challenging to reach folks these days under these COVID conditions. So we appreciate you all sharing the post, getting as many eyeballs on this as possible so we can help spread the word and get the message out for another amazing Democratic judicial candidate that we have here. So let's go ahead and kick it off, man. What's the story? What's the scoop? What's your background? What can you share with us?
I'm a Cincinnati kid, man. I mean, I'm born and raised here. I grew up in Evendale. My parents came here from kind of all over the place. So my dad is actually from India, came here to go to school and to get an education, and then ended up landing a job in Cincinnati, and it stuck. And he's been here ever since 1963, 64. So he's been here a long, long time. And then my mom is actually from South Africa, and so she was actually escaping apartheid, and that's part of what brought her over. And then she got married and came over here and has been in Cincinnati since then. So I'm a Cincinnati kid, grew up in the 80s, thoroughly enjoyed, the once and future heyday of Cincinnati athletics. The Bengals made the Super Bowl, wire to wire Reds. I hope that we get to see that level of excellence. Well, I hope we have sports again.
Right. Right.
But I hope we get to see that level of excellence in Cincinnati sports again. I grew up locally, went to Princeton High School, Xavier University, and then went to the St. Louis University School of Law. After law school, I started working out in Arizona, returned back to Ohio, and held a variety of jobs. I helped working for a friend who was a sitting common pleas judge. I helped run her campaign. It was Judge Nadine Allen.
Mm-hmm. Love Judge Allen. Love me some Judge Allen.
Yeah, she's great. And it's funny because I know her really only as my neighbor. I don't think I actually really knew that she was a judge until I moved back after law school. My parents you should call Nadine up. She could help. I'm like, well, why? She's a judge.
Right.
I know that. That was just David's mom who lived 2 doors down. So it's always great to learn new things about people and get to see them in a different light. And I helped her out because she knew I'd done some political work back when I was in college. And then she helped me get a job with the state Democratic Party where I focused on voter protection work. So making sure that votes are being counted and that people are getting their ballots. Critical issues these days.
I was going to say that's that's one of the things that they're going to try to do, right? Besides the voter suppression. And it seems like it's getting even more and more blatant. Just real briefly on that, what's involved when you say that? How are we actually making sure that that's happening?
Well, I think the voter protection team is a group of lawyers, sometimes some law students as well, that are really committed to making sure that, especially on Election Day, if there are any issues, that we have a group of people around the state that are deployed statewide that can get to court if they need to get to court to file motions, that can be ready to interact with the Secretary of State's office. That can really just ensure that we are not seeing additional issues pop up. And so if there were potentially issues, either opening the polls or closing the polls, it would be that group in conjunction generally with the state party, with some other good government groups who would go to the courts to try to keep the polls open to make sure every vote is counted. But so I started doing some of that work back in 2010, and also did a lot of work on the then state Supreme Court Chief Justice race. Came back to Cincinnati after that election, after November 2010. Started my own practice, where I was taking appointments from the court, doing criminal defense work, and also doing estate planning work. And I think that's where I really got to learn a lot of the intricacies of the issues that people see and just how important they are to deal with. Because if you do it poorly, it just tears families apart.
Right. And that's important, because going forward, we'll talk when we kind of get up to the present time that you're actually running for the Court of Common Pleas Probate Division. So you'd be a probate judge, and so then we could talk, and people know that aspect of probate, and if you don't have good estate planning, a good will, those types of things that can get tied up in the court. So we'll talk about more about what that means and what else the probate court does, because not everybody knows that. Right,
and honestly, I think if you talk to a lot of lawyers, they're not particularly sure exactly what the probate court does, and they don't practice in that specific area of law. But after I was working in my practice for a little while, Judge Allen called me back and said, "Hey, I've got an opening on my court staff. I'd love for you to join me and work here and work at the courthouse and get to learn how the courthouse works." So I joined her for a period of time, for a few months, working for her at the courthouse downtown. But then I got an incredible opportunity and a call to go work at the State House, where I was asked to serve as the chief counsel for the Senate Democratic Caucus. And that was a position I held for 4 years. And that was an incredible experience, because you were operating at the highest levels of government. You were negotiating at the highest levels of government, negotiating with the governor's office, with Republican senators, Democratic senators, the people in the House, to try to really make life better for people in Ohio. And the thing that I really loved about that job was the sheer breadth of the work that I got to do. Because I was working on everything from ethics filings and ethics laws to civil rights to criminal justice reform to election law. And I was able to really build kind of an area of expertise in election law, which served me well, because after 4 years of working at the State House, I returned back to Cincinnati to take my current job, where I work as an in-house lawyer with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati. But I've also had opportunities since I've returned home to do things that I've always wanted to do, like teach. And so I've taught election law at the University of Cincinnati College of Law. I spent 3 years teaching that. And then I taught an undergraduate version of the same course at Xavier as well.
So I remember I called you for, I can't remember what it was, but we were chit-chatting. I'm like, "What's up, man?" And you're like, "Well, get prepared to teach my class tonight, and at work doing this and that and all this other stuff." And so you're somebody who's always had a full plate and get stuff done from multiple different angles, which I love. But in the midst of all that, you're in the military too, right? Yeah. How does that? How do you have time for that? How does that happen in the midst of all this?
Yeah, so when I was working at the State House, one of the things that I'd always wanted to do, I'd always wanted to serve in the military and try to figure out how to make it work so that way it worked with my life plans, what I wanted to do, and quite frankly, that I would be an asset to the military as well. And so I decided when I was working at the State House that I wanted to do a little bit more. So I applied for and got accepted and joined the Army Reserve Judge Advocate General Corps. So those are the Army lawyers, military lawyers in the Army Reserve. And so for the last 7 years, I've done we say traditionally 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. It's never 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. It's always more than that. But I've been able to do that. And it's been a great experience also. Again, like one of the things that I've appreciated about my career has been how no matter what I've been able to do, every single job that I've had has allowed me to expand my horizons and work in a broad variety of fields. And so even with the Army, I mean, there's the core 5 subjects in military law, which are national security law, criminal justice, military justice, general legal assistance, administrative law, and fiscal law. And so I've been able to work in those fields and have had some amazing experiences. For 3 years, I was a special victims counsel, which meant that I represented the victims of military sexual assault, which is something that doesn't exist in the civilian world. So even in the military, all the victims get a lawyer as well to work with them through the process. And that was an incredibly rewarding experience, but that was 3 years of my time. What's really been something that's followed me throughout my entire time in the Army has been doing the general legal assistance work, where you spend a lot of time sitting down with soldiers, many times who are about to deploy to war, and work through their will, their power of attorney, their financial power of attorney, their living will, if they need a trust set up. You work through these documents and what their issues are, and that's what I spent a lot of time the last 7 years doing.
Well, that's amazing, man, and really kind of speaks to this, like I said, the breadth of experience that you have, but not only that, also your commitment to, public service, which I think leads to you, running for public office. And because I know as a high-powered attorney that you are, you could just say to hell with all that and just, follow the money wherever it may be. But, the fact that you're going over and above, it's one of the things that I really love about you as an individual, to where you're really passionate, caring about, about people that need help like that. And so that's amazing. So,
well, thanks, man. I mean, look, that's kind of just the way I was raised, though. I mean, I was raised that, look, we're going to have a lot of advantages and opportunities in life, and there's a lot of people that aren't going to have those. And it is a responsibility to give back, to take all the advantages that I've been given. Some of them are just, sheer dumb luck, right? Just being born in the United States in the 80s, being born into a middle-class family that focused on education. That's luck. That I did nothing to deserve that. I was lucky that I was born into that. And so I have a responsibility to take these advantages I've been given just simply by being born here at this time to my family and really try to help other people out who have been a lot less fortunate.
No, that's amazing stuff and really speaks a lot about you as a person. And speaking of that, on a personal level, how do you look so fresh, man? You look fresh as a daisy, but you've got the new baby as well. How's everything going with that, with the fam?
So 2 things. One, I just shaved for you. So
everybody else, it doesn't make no difference to me. I appreciate it.
Did report for Army duty this weekend, so I had to make sure that I was in regulations. But the baby slept through the night last night, so I feel much more refreshed than I have at any point in the last year. So I'm doing great right now.
Well, that's awesome. Around here, I just got Josie, which the cat. She's taking a nap right now, so usually not a problem around these parts, but that's cool. So glad everything's going good. My recommendation to anybody is a dog is wonderful and a baby is wonderful. You probably don't want to get both at the same time or within close succession. I've learned that lesson the hard way. And if you do get a dog, maybe don't get a puppy right before you have the baby because he's a lot. I love him, but he's a lot. That's a lot. Better you than me. I'll leave it at that. So so you ran a great race in 2018.
2018.
Just came up a hair short, and you're back now running for the probate court, which sometimes it takes us as new candidates, as I well know, once or twice to get your feet wet and get your name out there and all those kinds of things. What was that experience? Like for you? What running for office? It's a lot, and we could talk a little bit now about what's going on. It's weird in these COVID days because all the typical stuff of going to events and different things, we're not doing that. What was your thoughts on that? And sufficiently that you come back and give it a go again this time. Yeah, so I've spent time around politics. When I was in college, I volunteered on a lot of campaigns, worked at the state party, worked at the General Assembly, and so did extracurricular political work at that time.
Man, it's a lot, and that's the. If anybody's ever interested in running for public office, I will encourage them to do so. I think it's important. I think it's important to find good people who are willing to change their communities and willing to put themselves out there to do it. But I'll also have a very serious sit-down conversation with them about this. You think you may know how much time this is going to take up and how much this is going to really infect every aspect of your life. You have no idea until you do it yourself. Even if you've managed a campaign in the past, until you're the candidate, until it's your name on the ballot, you have no clue the mentality that you're going to have, the mindset you're going to have, how hard you're going to have to work, and quite frankly, how personal it's going to feel. Whether things are going well, or if you don't come up with a win and you come up a little short, it's gonna be personal. And you just got to be ready for that. But more importantly, your family's got to be ready for that. If you have a significant other, if you have a spouse, you need to ensure that you have sat down and had a very serious and long conversation with them about, hi, I'm not going to be home for the next year.
Right.
Because look, I mean, the places that you're going to go to meet people, and you need to meet people because they need to meet you and understand that you are not just about getting a job on the taxpayer's dime, that you honestly believe in the work and the job that it is, and you believe in making the community a better place. But to do that, you got to meet people where they are. And throughout the week, that's going to be in the evenings. And that's going to be at community councils. That's going to be at political clubs. That's going to be on the weekends at church festivals. You got to meet people where they are. And that's going to be after work. So it's going to take up a lot of time. But it's rewarding because you meet so many people. You meet so many people all around the county, at least if you're running for a countywide race. And you get to understand that everyone honestly really wants the same things. I don't care where you went to high school. I don't care who your dad played golf with. I don't care what race, religion, sexual orientation, age you are. Most people generally want the same things. The political question tends to be, how do you achieve that end? And that's, I think, where you will get into discussions with people about how best to achieve the ends that people want. When you're running for judicial race, look, people want to make sure that if they're ever in front of the judge, if they're ever in front of court, they're going to be given a fair shake. They want to ensure that their civil rights are going to be protected. That's what people want. They want a government that is transparent, that is accessible, that will treat people with empathy. And I think at the end of the day, most people, honestly, if you really drill down on it, they want the same thing. Now, the question is exactly how do you get there?
Well, and that's a great point because and I think that's been one of the challenges, on the one hand, we'll talk more about this, about the actual, the actual campaign at this moment. But one of the challenges that we have in terms of the judiciary is that, yes, the parties endorse. We know that in Hamilton County for the last 100 years, basically, until we've made a lot of headway in the last couple of years in terms of getting candidates elected from the Democratic Party in Hamilton County. But I think that was one of the challenges that people, especially in criminal court, that people didn't necessarily feel like they were getting a fair shake. That it's such a good old boys club down there at the courthouse, from the prosecutor, to at the time the clerk of courts. And this person's nepotism, and this person's and we give jobs to whomever, and it's just kind of this inbred scenario that really, when it gets like that, it's just not good. And you get to the point where people don't. I feel like I go down there, if I don't know somebody, I'm probably going to get the book thrown at me, and lock them in jail, and throw away the key, kind of thing.
Well, I think though. It is on some level political, but I think it's also just small p political. It's about the politics of power, and that in our community, it's been the Republican Party that's been in control for 100 years or so. In other places around the state and around the country, it's the Democratic Party. And I think what you see happening you have similar issues that crop up in any community where one group of people has been in charge with really no significant threat to their power for 50, 100 years, where the operations become stale, where innovation becomes a dirty word, where the idea, well, this is just the way we've always done it, rules the day. And I think that's why a lot of people across our society are just tired with how things have been operating, because I think people recognize that we could have a better functioning court system. We could have a system that really does respect people's rights more so than we have right now. We really could have a system that is more transparent and accessible. But there has to be somebody on the inside that has the will to upset the apple cart and upset the status quo. And I think that's why you saw a lot of us have success in 2018, and that's why we're hoping all of us can have success this year, because this year everything's on the table, from prosecutor to sheriff to control potentially of the Common Pleas General Division Court to the probate court. Probate court, for example, you talked about the issues of how the operations of like the clerk's office have run. The probate court is its own clerk's office. It's its own IT department. It's its own court. It's a self-contained universe that has approximately 40 employees. So if you want change, you don't have to get a majority of judges in probate court. You just have to elect one. You just got to elect the one right person for the job. And that's why I've decided I wanted to run for this job.
That's amazing, and a great segue, really, to talk a little bit more about what the probate court does. So we know that it handles like estates. You come in there if your will's not airtight or what have you. The probate court. Oh, so yeah. So explain it to me, a newbie like myself, and the rest of us. What exactly and the probate court actually does some things that we might not expect, and has some other responsibilities countywide.
Sure. So the probate court has approximately a little over 80 different authorities and jurisdictions that fall solely under the probate court. It has kind of become a catch-all over the years for when the General Assembly needed to stick an authority somewhere, they seem to give it to the probate court. But it's also, given the breadth of the cases that can come before the probate court, a place that we're all going to find ourselves in front of at some point or another. Sometimes it's for a good reason, all right? So this is where you go to get a marriage license. That was my first interaction with the probate court when we got married and had to go and get a marriage license. That's a good thing. Right? We want to make that process better for people so they can enjoy what they're setting off to do. It's also where adoptions happen. All adoptions come through the probate court. So those are the good portions of your life, the good things that happen to you that you want to come to the probate court for. Now there are other issues. So like you said, it's where you go to deal with issues of wills, estates, trusts, where you go if someone doesn't have one, figuring out what happens to their assets. It's also where determinations of mental health get made. So when you take someone with a mental health issue, really there's two different aspects or two different ways a case could proceed. One, it goes through the criminal case, where if they're lucky, they get pulled to the mental health docket, or they're just adjudicated through the criminal system, or somebody can be probated on mental health issues. And so the probate court makes those determinations about committing people for treatment. It makes determinations about who should get outpatient treatment.
So let me interrupt you right there. That's a very interesting point. I think a lot of people may not have experience with it. I did in my cop days, 26 years worth of it. One of the things that we would run into, in part because of our lack of mental health care in this country, which is a whole other scenario. But we would get called or somehow get engaged or involved with a family, that's challenged because they've got somebody that they can't care for, or that has had changes in their mental health situation. They're trying to help them, but yet this person's an adult. So if they're not an immediate threat to where we could take them for like a 72-hour hold type of thing, that would be then our suggestion was for that family to go to the probate court and go through that process. And that's something that's it's hard. It's challenging. Most people don't know. It's kind of scary. And on the one hand, this person's creating a lot of problems. They're unable to care for themselves, or they're doing, inappropriate things. So what do we do with them? And so then that family would go to the probate court, and if they wanted to do something and the person didn't want to do it, then the probate court, correct me if I'm wrong, has the authority to order that person to go into treatment or those types of things.
So they do, but the standard under the law as to when you can do that versus where there's also a large need for people to have some sort of quasi-judicial determination, there's a pretty big gulf there. So the standard for which you need to be able to actually commit somebody is much higher than the standard that I think many of us would assume for someone being able to handle their own affairs. And I think that is an issue that our laws need to catch up. That we need to, that the probate courts as a whole need to work with the General Assembly and try to ensure that that our laws accurately reflect what our current knowledge of healthcare and mental health is, in order to give the courts the appropriate authorities to be able to help as many people as possible.
No, that's that's good stuff and good information. And just kind of dovetailing from that, then. The probate court's also responsible for some other things that are kind of timely right now with what's going on in Hamilton County that you might not expect. So what can you tell us, for example, about the county parks?
Right. So like I said, it's kind of become a catch-all over the years that we're going to put authorities under probate court that we don't want to put anywhere else. And one of the authorities that a probate court judge has is to appoint the Parks Board. And also the probate court judge has sole appointment authority, but also sole discretion and authority to remove them.
This is the county parks board, not the city of Cincinnati Parks Board.
Correct. This is the county parks board. And so where this becomes interesting, just timely today, these last couple of weeks, is that the Parks Board had put together a levy that they voted on at the Parks Board, and they have the authority to issue a levy that would then go and be placed on the ballot for November. When I heard about this, I had a lot of questions and concerns, and not about the wisdom of putting a tax hike in the middle of a massive global downturn in the economy. My concerns were also process related, because when I started talking to the county commissioners, and I started talking to people with different organizations around the community, it became clear that the board had not sought the input of the coalition partners that one would think that they would need in order to get this passed. And the same coalition partners that they had in 2016 when they put a similar levy on the ballot. And so that made me think about what would I do if I was a probate court judge. And look, I don't think the probate court judge should have the authority to vote on the Parks Board. I think that would be problematic. I don't think the probate court judge should tell the Parks Board what to do. I think that's problematic as well. But when you're choosing people to appoint to a board that has taxing authority, I think it is incredibly important that one of the principles that guides you as a probate court judge in making the appointment, and one of the principles that guides the people who you're going to appoint for their term on the board, is their commitment to public discourse, their commitment to transparency, their commitment to getting as much information in front of as many people and fully vetting a concept. I mean, for example, if something goes through the county commission and needs to go be put on for a levy, it has to go through the tax levy review committee. The probate court, through the Parks Board, would not have to do that. But I think I would ask that question when I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to appoint to the board of, do you think that maybe this would be beneficial, or do you think that we should create something, or that you as a Parks Board should create something to review this? Because I think it's important that the voters have an independent authority look at what is being put in front of them to be able to understand what they're going to be voting on.
Well, and that's a great point. And actually, we might have should have put this at the beginning, but we've got a number of people joining us, and I think this is a great point. First of all, not an attorney, but if I was running for probate court judge, and with this going on, I'd be talking a lot about it now, which you are, which is fantastic, because I think people just don't know this, and it's a challenge. You know, I'm more interested in oftentimes in Cincinnati specific things, but we've had the same kind of scenario where, you know, stuff just kind of happens. You know, the smoke-filled rooms and the and the you know, kind of behind closed doors kind of thing, especially with some of these appointed boards that aren't really, you know, it's not like there's reporters there every day watching what they're doing. And I think, you know, nobody doesn't love the parks, right? And so typically you think, well, yeah, of course we all do. And so, but it just really lacked, and I think there was a sufficient community pushback on that process or lack thereof, that they're now maybe are they second guessing themselves about this levy, or what's going on with it?
I don't know. I'm just looking at what I've read through the Inquirer or through the local media, and I read that it looks like there was notice given that there will be a meeting again tomorrow, and it sounds like that they may pull the levy from the ballot. But if you even read the reporting on it, I mean, Jason Williams had a column where he interviewed the director of the parks, and they didn't seem to even have a plan now as to how this money was going to be spent. And this was voted on weeks ago. And so, again, I'm not going to comment on the wisdom of it. I don't think that would be my job as probate court judge or my job as judicial candidate. But I think the process needs to be tweaked so that way we can ensure that the citizens of Hamilton County understand what's going on, have ample opportunity to comment, and are willing to understand the nuances of what they're being asked to fund, especially in a recession that we're going through right now.
Right. No, that's a great point. And so, I just think it's real important that we kind of keep an eye on that, and especially with some of these appointed boards where you're not elected officials, but they have a lot of power, with maybe not a lot of visibility or oversight. So I think this is a great point to say that with the Parks Board, we need to have folks on there that are make sure they're engaging in the public process, so people know what's going on and can have some input. With that being said, we've had a couple people stop by. Nancy Gack says hi. So what's up, Gack?
Hey, Nancy.
Barbara O'Sullivan McDermott says what's up. Hey, Pavan. So that's cool. We've had some people stopping in. Let's just talk for a minute, and we've been on over a half hour already, and you and I could just sit here and chop it up all night.
Sure.
But just kind of dovetailing into where we're at right now, where we stand with the campaign. So, one of the things that we stress, and I did a lot of field work on in the 2018 judicial race, and I think we were pretty successful, not completely successful, or you'd already be on the bench. So all of us have to work harder. But one of the things is, people, especially in a presidential year, people vote for that. And then they come down the ballot, and then then the numbers kind of drop off, and so it's one of our goals to make sure people vote, or start it over on the back of the ballot and start and work your way up towards the front and make sure you get everybody. But our judicial candidates, because we know that we want people to be fair and impartial, there's not a D or an R on the ballot. And so if you go in there and say, well, I want to vote for my Democratic judicial candidates, but I don't have my slate card with me, and I don't have my smartphone with me. It's very important that we have that slate, right? And that we, especially for the down ballot offices, and especially even more so for the judicial candidates, that we know who's playing on the right team, the correct team. So, that's super important, right? So, how do we emphasize that? What do we do to get this slate card out there and make sure that everybody's voting their full ballot?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. We got to make sure the slate card is getting out to everybody. We got to make sure that people understand what's at stake, that control of the court is at stake, control of these divisions of the court is potentially at stake. And, as a taxpayer, what you're going to get for your money is at stake. But I think you also talked about a couple things I want to just briefly touch on, which is running for judicial office is weird and hard. It is the hardest type of office to run for, because not only are you not permitted to have a D or R next to your name on the ballot, which, if we're going to be honest, is what most voters are looking for. Mm-hmm. We can talk about the wisdom as to whether or not we know liberal Republican judges or conservative Democratic judges. But I think most voters, if they felt like they at least had that one signal, they would generally know which way they were probably going to vote.
Right.
So that already makes it difficult. When you compound that with the fact that judicial candidates are subject to some very strict rules about what we can say, who we can appear in front of, what comments we can make, and even how much money we can raise. And so it becomes very difficult to run for judicial office as a challenger, because there are all the advantages that an incumbent has in any other office, I think, are multiplied in a judicial office, just from the purely political aspect of campaigning. Then you add this year where, we can't physically be out meeting people. These conversations are wonderful, and I've really enjoyed watching all of us really use technology and adapt technology to the campaign cycle. But it's still not the same. It's not the same as really sitting down, shaking someone's hand, giving them a hug, really having a one-on-one conversation. And so we're just going to have to work harder. And like you said, we got to get that slate card in everyone's hands. We got to just make sure that people know whatever it takes. So please, if you're watching this, text your friends, text your family, take a picture of the slate card. Get people to understand that these races are important. One of the problems that we had in 2018 was that it was the first time that every race was being contested and anybody can ever run. And because of that, people were starting to pay more attention, but they needed to be educated on exactly what the courts did, what each level of court did, which each specific court did. And so use that as an opportunity. Talk to people about what they know, what they don't know, and try to educate them. That's what we've been trying to do as candidates, is really trying to explain to people, hey, this is the difference between the Court of Appeals and the General Division Common Pleas. And here's this thing, probate court, that even though everybody's going to find themselves in front of it at some point in their life, most people don't understand what it does. And so just taking a couple minutes, taking that little extra time, because look, this year it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of noise from the presidential race to the congressional races to some of the other countywide races. It's going to be hard for us to get that information out to people. So we need people to get that information out to their own friends and family. And then you consider 30 people are running for judge on your ballot. It's half the ballot. When you consider 15 different offices, including the 2 Supreme Court races, this is going to be half your ballot. So we need to make sure people do it. Look, we expect Joe Biden is going to win the county by a handful of points. But there's always a 20 to 30% drop-off when it comes to judicial races. And if the people who show up to vote for Joe Biden vote for every single Democratic judicial candidate, Democrats will have control of the state Supreme Court for the first time ever. Democrats will have control of the Court of Appeals for the first time ever. Democrats will have control of the Court of Common Pleas for the first time ever. Democrats will control the probate court for the first time ever. That's what's at stake this time around. And we need people to understand that, and we need people to get out there and convince all their friends that they got to vote.
That's awesome. That's powerful stuff, man. There is so much at stake now, from obviously nationally on down. And really, these are the races. And you mentioned a probate court. Most of us, in one way or another, even maybe after we're gone, will end up in front of a probate court judge. And so this is so important, and it touches so many people. And so that's why it's so important that we do this. So everyone, I urge you, ask you, go on the Hamilton County Dems website. The slate card is on there. We need everybody to have it. It's one of the things when I was running around in 2018, going to all the events when we still had them. Literally have this with you. Now have it on your phone so you have it. Share it so people have it. So you get there. I've had people on election day saying, I don't have it. They're texting me while they're at the poll saying, "What? Can you text me the slate card?" So we need to make sure that we get that in everybody's hands. The other thing that you mentioned that's kind of weird for our judicial candidates is you're not allowed to actually, and I can tell you, as far as raising money goes, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge in any race. And honestly, it sucks to sit there calling people asking for money hours a day. But it's even more challenging in the judicial races because the candidate is not actually allowed to ask for money. So you kind of have to but yet you need money to run a campaign, right? These yard signs don't pay for themselves and all of the rest.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Derek, I mean, one of the issues that just as a whole, I think everybody running this year is realizing is given the uncertainty because of COVID, we're pushing a lot of people to vote early, vote by mail.
Mm-hmm.
And while that is good in the sense that we know that those votes will be done, they will be in, and we don't have to worry about anything happening on election day. From a campaign perspective, it makes campaigns more expensive because wherein you would usually have volunteers everywhere on election day handing stuff out, you're going to have to mail a lot of that now. And so that is an additional cost, which, let's be honest, this is not a great environment to raise money. A lot of judicial candidates are not generally allowed to ask for money. But even if, to the extent you are, I mean, we're going through the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. It's hard to get to people and say, hey, I know you're probably worried about making rent.
Right.
But can you give me money? And so that whole concept, even for the candidates who can ask for money, even I'm sure for the prosecutor, commissioner, clerk of courts candidates, it's a hard environment right now. And so there are also plenty of opportunities for people to volunteer, and that's where we need help. We need people to, even though we're not going to be knocking on people's doors to hand them stuff and talk to them, we're still going to be doing lit drops. We're still going to be taking that slate card and going around neighborhoods and making sure we leave it on everyone's doors so that way they've got it. We're still going to be getting people on the phones, phone banking, calling voters once they've requested their absentee ballot to make sure that they have the slate card digitally or physically in front of them so they know who they're going to be voting for.
No, that's great. That's great stuff, and it's a great call to action, I think, for all of us. So what can we do? I've got your website, pavanforjudge.com, in the comments here. People obviously can share this video, even just seeing the faces and the names, or even if they just watch a couple of minutes. They remember that, I mean, it's a couple unforgettable guys right here, right? And then for everybody else watching, look, these are tough times, but if you can, even if it's $5, $10, $20, whatever the case may be, whatever you can spare, go on, because he's not allowed to ask, so I'm asking for him. Go to pavanforjudge.com right now and drop a donation there. You can sign up to volunteer, I'm sure. And that way we can do some phone banking, send some texts and some other things, and stay connected with your campaign. So with that being said, we've been rapping for a while here. This is some great information. I've learned a lot on this just on this show tonight. So thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Any closing comments before we wrap up?
No, just thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me. I really do mean what I say, though, that I know we hear it every single time. This is the most consequential election of our lives. But at the local level, and as someone who's worked at the General Assembly, who's worked at the local courthouse, at the local level is where most of the laws that impact your daily life happen, where most of the decisions that impact your daily life happen. At the local level, this is an opportunity for an absolute sea change in how Hamilton County is run. And I just would ask everybody, please, one, make sure you have a plan to vote. Make sure that you know if you're going to be voting absentee, make sure you've submitted your application. If you're going to go in person, you're going to have almost a month of early voting in person that you can go to the Board of Elections and go vote. If you plan to vote on election day, make sure you have a plan of how you're going to do that. Make sure that you have talked to all of your family and friends to ensure that they know what their plan is and how they're going to vote, and that they know who they're going to vote for. Because with these judicial races, if we eliminate that 20 to 30% drop-off, we're going to win. And if we win, we're going to have a system that is transparent, that is accountable, that believes in empathy, that believes in data, that believes in putting all the resources of our community together, that isn't necessarily going to focus on being tough on crime, that we're going to focus on being smart on crime, that we're going to focus on making customer service a value of the courthouse, that we're going to reimagine what the courthouse can be. We're going to make it a place where a community can come together, not just when something goes bad, but even to celebrate the good times. That if you want a bold vision for what our community can be, you have the opportunity to vote that into office this year. So please follow us on social media. Everything, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is all at Pavan for Judge. Go to our website, sign up to volunteer, and I look forward to running these last 90 days as hard as we possibly can, and changing the face of justice in Hamilton County come November 3rd.
Man, that's awesome. I am fired up. I am ready to run through brick walls right now or kick in doors. I've been known to do back in the day for Pavan for Judge. It's awesome, man. We had Crystal Dandridge just drop by. She's everywhere doing everything, and she says she can't wait to call you Judge. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So follow, click, like. Drop a donation, pavanforjudge.com for me, at Derek Bauman, everywhere. And then, as always, we will upload this to my YouTube. Derek Bauman on there should crop up. And we will have this for posterity's sake. When we're old and gray or no hair whatsoever, we can come back and look how good we looked back in the day. But that's awesome. Thank you, everybody, as always, for tuning in. Cincinnati, love you. Don't forget, pavanforjudge.com. Drop him a little Scooby snack on there right now. And thanks for joining me, man. It's always great to talk to you, and I really look forward to you going to a great victory in November. So appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon, too, hopefully.
One of these days. One of these days. That's right. Okay, thanks, everybody. Cincinnati, as always, love you. Have a great night.
Thank you.